All right. Well, that was a little bit of a glitch, but we are live. We This is the very first episode of Meet the Local Experts. Let me tell you a little bit about Meet the Local Experts and why I'm doing this. So, for those that don't know me, my name is Jay Vix, and I own a digital marketing agency just in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, and we help small to mid-sized businesses with their digital marketing. And I'm also an avid networker, moving into coaching and consulting. And one of the ideas I had was to bring on some fellow business owners from not only this area, but from around the country, and kind of have a conversation with them. Let them talk about what they do and learn a little bit more about different businesses, and just to kind of give them some content that they could share, and kind of give them an opportunity to have some real live video. So today is our very first Meet the Experts video, and I'm really excited because I have a fellow member of our networking gurus meeting in the Greensboro area with me today. I'm going to bring him on in just a second, and it should be an interesting conversation. I encourage everyone who tunes in. We're streaming live on actually 4 channels today. A couple of Facebook, 2 Facebook pages, a Facebook group, and a YouTube channel. I encourage anybody who tunes in and watches to ask questions in the comments or just interact with us if you feel so inclined. But without further ado and without wasting any more time, I'm going to bring up my featured guest of the inaugural Meet the Local Expert series. I'm going to bring Brian Watkins up onto the screen with me. Brian, how are you?
All right. How you doing, Jay?
Doing wonderful. It's exciting to be kicking this series off and having you as my first guest. So maybe that'll be a trivia question someday.
All right. Glad to be on here.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. And the way this is going to work, Brian, is really we're just going to kind of talk about your business. I want people to kind of get an idea of what it is that you do and who you serve and how you do it a little bit. And so I guess I only have a couple of like really mild questions to ask you, but I really want to let this be about you and your business. So just maybe just start by telling us kind of how long you've been in Greensboro and tell us a little bit about your business.
All right. Well, I've been in Greensboro since 2008. I moved down from the Northern Virginia area. And my business consists of taking old media formats such as VHS tape, 8mm film, slides, and digitizing them and enhancing the footage using modern techniques to make them better than they ever were.
That's so cool. So I've been lucky enough to see some of your work, and I see some equipment behind you that looks really cool, and we'll talk about that. But do you find that people are finding you mostly in the Greensboro triad area, or are people finding you from all around the country or even outside of the country?
A considerable part of my business, they came right out and said, well, you're local and I don't want to mail my stuff off. So that is a considerable factor in my local business. I do get some business throughout the country. I've gotten business from California, Louisiana, Arizona, but most of my business is local. But at least once a month, I get something from out of state.
Cool. That what do you think? What is probably your most? I know you said most people don't want to mail stuff, probably because it's fragile or it's old. But what are the like the big things that most people send you, and what kind of stuff do you work on the most, do you think?
By far the biggest thing I work on is VHS tape. Just standard VHS. People did a lot of home movie on those. And then the second most common thing is 8mm film. But any of the consumer formats, the Handycam, like the small camcorder tapes, those were very popular in the 90s and the 2000s. So it really all depends on what age the person is as to what kind of media they have. Because most people only bought 1 or 2 cameras, over a generation, unless you were a techie that went out and bought new gear every other year or something like that. But more often than not, I just see 2 or 3 kinds of formats. and they usually cover a whole generation.
Very cool. Very cool. Like, the one thing that I'm wondering is what really got you interested in this? How did you stumble into this career? Was it like chosen? Was it by accident? Was it purpose? Like, how did you end up turning this into a business?
Well, actually, I was doing this as a hobby for family members probably 20 years ago. And then about 15 years ago, I suffered some health setbacks and I had to start working from home. And my family said, well, you've already got all this equipment sitting around. Why don't you do that professionally? You're good at it. So, and I really haven't looked back.
That is awesome. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you a little testimonial to that, because I had some old band stuff and music stuff from years ago when I played in a band, and you were able to really enhance the sound on everything that I had. And one of it was a song that I wrote 20 something years ago. It was really low grade, terrible format. And you were able to kind of remaster it for me, and it sounds great. I love it. I actually put it up on SoundCloud shortly after that. So thank you again for that.
Oh, okay.
Just want to say hi. We did get a comment from Mike Stipanoff, who we both know. He's listening in. Hey, Mike. We hope you're doing well today. All right. Let's see. So you said you started this kind of on the side about 20 years ago, and it was just kind of you fell into it almost because you were doing it for friends and family. Tell me about some of the equipment you own, and maybe spotlight maybe like the coolest piece of equipment that you have.
All right. Well, we'll start with the coolest piece of equipment I have, and it's directly behind me. It's that giant reel-to-reel tape machine that was made by Akai in 1971, so it's a nearly 50-year-old unit. It weighs 65 pounds, and it was a professional tape machine, so it was made for broadcast use. But that also means that it has a setting that gives it 15-inch per second playback speed, which in technical geek means really high quality sound, like better than CD, out of a 50-year-old tape machine. And it's one of my main sources of listening even now.
That is super cool. Tell us about some of the other equipment that you use regularly.
Well, the most frequent things I use are either my industrial VCRs or my 8mm film scanner. I've got a device that actually scans in 8mm film frame by frame. It's a tedious process, but for example, for a 3-minute reel of film, that takes a half hour to scan in. But you get this amazing full high def footage once you've waited that time. And it's certainly worth it. But it's very tedious, though. Like I said, very time consuming. About 10 minutes for every 1 minute of actual footage when you're dealing with old film.
Okay. Well, that's wild. It's amazing that the time that you have to put into doing this. Now, I know you've mentioned to me that sometimes you've gotten things that are like old and brittle. What are some ways that you kind of handle with care, so to speak? I don't know how else to word it, but what are some things that you do to make sure that you don't do further damage to something that somebody gave you that was already slightly damaged?
Well, the main thing is to be careful, and that is very specific when it comes to the old films, especially the ones from the 1940s. Actually, I handled some color film footage from 1937, and it was the first year color was commercially available, and that footage was not delicate at all. And I've handled footage from the mid-50s that was so delicate it would break as you were trying to load it in the machine. I wasn't actually able to successfully get it all the way through. So that's only happened a couple of times as far as that severe deterioration, but it's something you have to be mindful of.
Wow. So would you say like your number one project that you get often is like families home old movies, like older movies?
Oh, by far, but sometimes it's newer video cassette formats because we had videotape all the way up until the digital age.
Right.
They had little bitty like DVC Pro tapes, hardly bigger than a postage stamp, and you could get an hour's worth of videotape on those, and those continued until the late 2000s. So yes, it's mostly old stuff, but every now and again I get some newer footage.
Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty cool. So now I know also, and I want you to fill in everybody on this because I think this is really cool. One of the things that you're doing right now is you've created kind of a web video series for YouTube, like a channel and playlist of a bunch of I think you call it the Vintage Tech Spotlight. Yeah. So talk to us about that and where people can find that and what they might experience when they watch some of your episodes.
All right. Well, what I've done is there are a lot of videos online, specifically from guys like the Oddity Archive, and there's a man out of England called Techmoan, and he's generally considered like the industry leader in technical videos as far as the old tech. But what I've done is I went a little bit of the opposite direction. These guys try to be as comprehensive as possible, and for someone that's not really into the technology or familiar with it, it can be a little boring. So what I try to do is I try to consolidate, try to make it concise, so someone who's not a tech person can sit here and watch something that's between 5 and 10 minutes long, that gives a brief but detailed explanation of whatever type of media they're working with. And I've just completed my 8th episode, and I generally do one every week.
That is so cool. Where now this is on your YouTube channel, right?
Correct. It's a YouTube, and there's a playlist that automatically updates every time I add a new episode. But just look for Vintage Tech Spotlight, or go to the Digital Restoration Services YouTube channel, whichever.
Perfect. Digital Restoration Services YouTube channel, and it's the Vintage Tech Spotlight. So if anybody's looking for that, while we were doing that, I'm going to put up a comment up on the screen from Mike Stipanoff. He said, Brian did 8 or 10 reels of family movies on 8mm sound film, which only was used for a few years before VHS. He put them on a thumb drive, and I sent them to my kids. They are now preserved forever. Excellent job. So very cool. So right. How, I know we've mentioned the YouTube channel and the Vintage Tech Spotlight. Tell us some ways that if somebody does see this video, how do they reach out and get a hold of you, and how do you start the process of working together?
Well, generally my contacts start with either a phone call or an email, and people tell me what they have. Sometimes they don't even know the type of tape they have. They just say, I've got these little bitty tapes, and I'll get into a brief conversation with them to get them to describe them. Or if they can't, quite get it worked out that way, sometimes they'll send me a picture over their phone. I'll identify what they've got. We figure out how much footage. We talk about pricing, and if they're still interested in moving forward, I have them set up an appointment, and they can either bring it out or mail it in to me, whichever.
Very cool. I just quickly, while you were talking about that, I forgot to capitalize the D there, but I got Digital Restoration Services Vintage Tech Spotlight on YouTube so that people can find you. And one other thing that I'd like to put on the screen for just a quick minute, your website, is that digitalrestorationservices.com or?
That's correct.
Okay, so Digital Restoration Services.com. I should have done this before we started, but I didn't, so it is what it is. Right. But we'll put that up there too. Digitalrestorationservices.com to find you. Tell me anything else that maybe we might have missed, or any cool projects you've worked on recently before we wrap up, just to kind of give people an idea of what something else that you've done that might be really cool.
All right. Well, actually, one of my favorite clients was a guy. He was a lion tamer, and there was a number of either homemade performances or TV performances from like the late 70s or early 80s that he was on. Whoa. And I did about 8 or 10 hours of his big cat handling footage, and it was just really neat having the guy sitting right next to you who you saw command these big beasts around. And so I just thought that was pretty neat. That
is wild. I bet that gives an interesting twist on this new tiger movie on Netflix that everybody's talking about. The tiger so
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Brian, again, you think the best way to reach you is to go to your website or YouTube and just put in a request with you?
Sure. There's my phone number listed either on the website. All my full contact information is on any one of my platforms. So any way you choose to see me, you'll have access to my email. You'll be able to call me, literally however you want to do it.
Awesome. Well, I will attest, and it sounds like Mike Stipanoff attested. Oh, and something else that popped in a few minutes ago that I wanted to make sure I read too, just as a further testimonial for you. Our friend Rob Leonard had written in, I think, to your Facebook page, and I saw it, that he had said that hospice had just been called in, and his mom wanted to talk about several family members who were deceased. He wanted to give, I'm just going to read it in his words. I wanted to give my mom an opportunity to see these people again, either in photos or some home movies we had taken years ago. I had some old VHS tapes, but they were old and damaged from being stored in a hot attic. Brian was able to take these old home movies and put them on a thumb drive so we could take a laptop to my mom's room and show her these treasures. To steal MasterCard's tagline, "It was worth every penny I paid Brian to see her reaction. It gave us a special memory with our mom just before she died, and that was priceless." So really, in essence, I mean, the work that you're doing, sure, there's a lot of technical work and a lot of time-consuming, very technical, very fragile things. But really what you're doing is you're giving people hope, you're giving people their memories, you're basically allowing people to feel really good in a time when maybe they're not always feeling really good.
Yes, I fairly frequently have people that come to me and say, "Well, my brother just died, and they don't have a VCR at the funeral home, and so and the service is tomorrow. Can you help me?" And of course, I drop everything I'm doing in a case like that. I make absolutely sure that whatever they bring me is going to be ready in time. And another thing that I see quite often, I do what's called a memory care slideshow. And that's for people with early onset dementia. And it's basically a collection of their favorite pictures. And then I have them and their family come in and narrate that. And I make a video. That way they can just watch that every day. And it's like, "Here, Mom, here's the house we grew up in. Here's our little dog, Frank." And the senior could just watch that every day. And it's a known fact that just watching old videos, and this doesn't mean for just dementia patients, just in general, watching old movies helps bring back old memories, because seeing this one thing will remind you of 5 others. And for people that are suffering from early onset dementia, the doctors do recommend looking at your old home movies and pictures a lot. And this makes a very convenient way to do that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on. Listen, anybody who's watching, if you want to get a hold of Brian, you can go to his website, digitalrestorationservices.com. You could go check out his Vintage Tech Spotlight on YouTube. It doesn't matter if you're in Greensboro or in North Carolina or anywhere in the US. If you've got old movies, old film, old pictures, any type of old media that needs to look new or play on a new modern format, he can put things on a USB drive for you. So give him a call and he'll give you a price, and I guarantee that price will be fair. And Brian, thanks so much for coming on today.
All right. And thank you for having me on, Jay. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You take care.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to the first episode. Brian did great. Again, if you want to get a hold of him, it's digitalrestorationservices.com, Digital Restoration Services Vintage Tech Spotlight on YouTube. I know him from the Greensboro area. I can attest that he will do really good work. Listen, if you want to come on a future episode, if you want your business spotlighted, we will do it. So just reach out, jay@jbimobile.com, or go to the howto.agency. Or just write us on our Facebook page. Until the next episode, which we're working on several new ones, we'll see you soon.